Hello and welcome to Memphis Like Gas for Water Small Business Webinar Power Pivot. I'm Gale Jones Carson, the Vice President of Community and External Affairs. This webinar is a platform to discuss how small businesses have pivoted during the pandemic and to share relevant information that can assist these businesses while we're going through this major pandemic. So all of you all who are Zooming in, please put your questions in the Q&A section, and those who are watching on Facebook, put your questions in the comments section. Today, the subject is, it's all about PPP, Payroll Protection Program. And we have several guests who are experts in this area, and they're going to share with us what they know about PPP, what the Federal Reserve Office offers, and available bank loans. So one of our guests today is Rory Thomas, who serves as the Executive Director of the Tennessee Small Business Development Center at Southwest Tennessee Community College in Memphis, Tennessee. Welcome, Rory. We greatly appreciate you being here. And then we also have Kevin Adams, who is a Senior Vice President and Chief Credit Officer for the Bank of Bartlett. Welcome, Kevin. Thank you for being here. And then we have Dr. Doug Scarborough. Is that right, Doug? I did pronounce it right.
Yes, Douglas Scarborough. You got
it. See, I leave the last part off sometime, but I'm sorry about that. But anyway, Doug is the Senior Vice President and Regional Executive of the Memphis Branch of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. So we're going to get started today. So Rory, let's start with you. Tell us exactly what you do, what your program is about, and what assistances you can make available for the small businesses in Memphis and Shelby County.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for having us. And first, just small business development centers. We are part of the U.S. Small Business Administration, so SBA's largest program. So there's nearly 900 centers across the country, including 14 in Tennessee. And what SBA does, they partner with local colleges and universities to host small business development centers. So we're hosted for Shelby and Fayette County at Southwest Tennessee Community College under Dr. Tracy Hall, who's the president. And for small business development centers, we first help entrepreneurs realize their dream of business ownership, and then use tools and resources that SBA provides to help existing companies remain competitive and hopefully grow. So during this pandemic, it's been very challenging for small businesses. And the Paycheck Protection Program has been one of the biggest lifelines to help businesses during this time. And with that, I'm glad to have Erin Davis, CPA, on our team. And she is the foremost expert on PPP. Her background is tremendous, knows all the rules and regulations, and it's kind of like our go-to for that information. And if her face looks familiar as well, she is of Netflix fame recently.
Aaron, I just want you to know he just stole my thunder.
Oh,
go on, Rory. Go on. You can go.
No. I'm gonna let you. No, I'm gonna let you.
Welcome, Aaron. We're so greatly appreciative for having you as well, with your expert knowledge and your
Thank you.
Netflix fame. So, is there anything that you want to share with us, Aaron?
As Rory said, I am also a small business specialist with the Tennessee Small Business Development Center, and I have really been doing a lot of research on the PPP program and making sure that our small business owners have the pertinent information they need to do the application and the forgiveness application process. Just been answering questions and making sure that they are going in the right direction, as well as having the right documentation for both applications and a good foundation for the process.
So how's that been working?
It's been going pretty well. Just making sure that we've been doing webinars at least maybe once or twice every couple of weeks to keep our small businesses abreast of everything that's going on. And they're very thankful for the information. And we have about a month left in the PPP application process. So we're just trying to make sure that everyone who is eligible get those applications in as soon as possible.
So the deadline is in March.
Yes, the deadline is March 31st.
And how many applications have you already received?
So how many applications has the SBA already received?
Yes.
I believe about thousands.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so
I have to look at the numbers, but for the second round of PPP, I believe by latest numbers, February 11th, it's been 115 billion in loans approved, and I think the average loan size is about 76,000. And for us, typically we'll provide counseling to about 300 to 400 businesses a year. In 2020, along with the pandemic, that increased to over 1,100 businesses. So it's a lot have been, reaching out for assistance on PPP, economic injury disaster loans, other programs that the city of Memphis had, Edge has, and so forth. But to apply with the PPP loan, I know Kevin is on here. You do need to go through a PPP lender, so you will need to go through your bank first.
So Kevin, we'll move next on to you next. So, Harold Byrd, who is the CEO and one of the founders of the Bank of Bartlett, there was an article recently entitled "The Tracks Have Been Laid." And he said he doesn't expect the Bank of Bartlett to dole out as many loans this time because fewer clients are eligible. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. The Bank of Bartlett in 2020, we assisted about 1,500 small business clients to obtain about $63 million worth of the PPP funds, and that supported well over 10,000 jobs. So we were very excited to be a part of that. As Harold mentioned in his statement, with the additional requirements in the second draw being that they had to prove a 25% reduction in revenue, and have some other certifications, there were some of those borrowers that did the initial round that don't qualify for the second draw. And so far in the first 30 days, we've seen about 350 small businesses come back for the second draw. So a smaller percentage, but we're still seeing those come in. And just like some of the others have stated previously, we're recommending that you get with your advisor, get with your bank to see if you qualify, because the time is running out. The current date is March 31st, and with a little less than half of the funds used that Congress set aside, it is time. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to have this presentation today and others to make sure everybody's aware of the ways to get access to the PPP funds and what we can do to help.
Okay, so there were some businesses who did not apply the first time you all. Can they apply this time? Or
If they didn't apply the first round, they can now apply in this new grouping. They're still considered a first draw in that scenario. So potentially they could get first and second draw, but anyone that did not apply that qualifies can still do so.
Okay. So let me ask you, what are some of the major differences with the second round from the first round?
I'll take that. And the major difference for the second round, the first round, is the second round you have had to participate in the first round, and then you have to prove that you had a revenue reduction of at least 25% for corresponding quarters from 2019 to 2020. So let's say quarter two is where we had a lot of our businesses in our area that were shut down or had reduced operations. And so if they could show in quarter two of 19 versus quarter two of 2020 that they had a reduction in revenue, then they could apply for the second draw.
Okay, so but you're saying those people had to apply the first time, but also people who did not apply can still apply with the second round.
That's correct. And I'm considering that a first draw. And so if they didn't participate originally, they can still now apply for the first draw, which essentially means they have to be in business as of February 15th of 2019. They have to make some certifications as to what they did. But yes, they can apply and get up to 2.5 times of their average monthly salary in a PPP fund.
So Isn't there a program where that individuals can apply?
This program, they can be individuals, but they'd have to be self-employed. So they can be
Okay.
1099. They don't necessarily have to have employees, but they do have to be considered a self-employed sole proprietor or a business with employees.
Okay. Okay. So Doug, before I go to Doug, there's one thing. I was talking to a business person about a week or so ago, and she informed me that the loan that she had gotten from the first round has been forgiven. So they are forgiving some of the loans?
Yeah, from the Bank of Bartlett's perspective, we started taking forgiveness applications in October, and the SBA is processing those. We've seen some of those processed as quickly as 2 days from SBA, and we still have some from October that have not been forgiven yet for various reasons. Nothing necessarily wrong that the borrower did.
Mhm.
SBA's just hasn't necessarily given us the details of how they're picking those up and giving their forgiveness. But there is, as Aaron mentioned, there is two sets of applications. There's the request for the loan funds, and then there's a second application for the forgiveness once they've utilized those funds in order to get full forgiveness.
Okay, so if a loan has been forgiven, can they apply for the second round?
Yes, ma'am. As in order to qualify for the second round, they have had to use all their funds from the first round, and
Okay.
so they had 24 weeks to spend those funds. They don't necessarily have to be forgiven. They have to just attest that they did use it properly and that they are applying for forgiveness.
Mhm.
So just because they haven't gotten a response from the SBA or from the bank that they went with, that shouldn't scare them off from applying for the second round if they qualify.
Okay. Okay. So Doug, how does the Main Street Lending Program work for profit businesses?
So the way the Federal Reserve Act, I know a lot of people will know the Federal Reserve or hear the Federal Reserve and know certain parts of it, is that we're a quasi-governmental organization and we act as the bank for other banks. So we don't necessarily work directly with small businesses or individuals on the lending side. We do a number of programs for them and have a number of community development initiatives that we have that directly apply to small businesses. For the Main Street Lending Program, it was one of about 9 facilities that the Federal Reserve set up. We are the lender of last resort. So what we do is, you look at the full market and you look at and see, what's happening with the macro economy when the pandemic hit, and obviously it's a public health crisis and an economic crisis because of the public health crisis. And when you start seeing the GDP start to fall, you start seeing the jobs, and you start seeing some of the effect on the economy due to the public health crisis. That's when the Fed stepped in. We have a Federal Reserve Act on portion 13.3 is under exigent circumstances, we can set up certain facilities. So basically, banks like the Bank of Bartlett would then come, go to the SBA, but then we are going to backstop institutions like the SBA. We're going to work directly with the Treasury to make sure that the market still has enough liquidity and that people are still going to have money.
So businesses do not come directly to the Federal Reserve Bank.
No, not not directly for funding, but then, like I said, if we're having a community development organization or, we're facilitating some kind of exchange like that, we actually do a lot of that. But directly for the financial standpoint, we work directly with banks and work with a number of banks, but then with a number of Fed member banks as well.
Okay, so who is eligible for the Federal Reserve loans? Eligible business definition?
So that would be banks, the ones, and one of the good things that happened early in the program with the PPP, and we don't issue this SBA issues and does the PPP program, but we did have, not only a Main Street program, but we also had payment protection, a PPP LF, which is a liquidity fund, or liquidity facility, that was backing that up. So institutions that early on in the crisis, they were saying, initially it was banks that work with the SBA, and then they said, okay, all banks that are able to provide these PPP funds can do that lending and work. Obviously, the ones with SBA had a little bit of prior knowledge, but we will work with all those banks and work with them to make sure that there's still, like I said, liquidity in the market. Because the biggest thing that you don't want to see in any, pandemic, you don't want the credit markets to freeze up. You don't want, if folks have credit, folks have cash, you don't want that to stop. You don't want the flow between the two to stop.
Okay. So before we go to Rory, because he has a presentation, I do have one more question.
Okay.
What's the difference between the Paycheck Protection Program and the Main Street loans?
So the Paycheck Protection Program, we are a lender of last resort, the Federal Reserve. Paycheck Protection Program is just what it says. That is, make sure it's protecting that payment. You talked about earlier where some of those are getting not even reimbursed, that you're able to get those loans and receive those loans, and it becomes a grant, and you don't have to repay those. The way it works with the Fed is that we're lending money, and we're going to lend money to the banking institution, and then we're going to give, favorable terms on that, but it is a loan, and it is expected to be repaid by those banks. But what we do is that, go ahead.
Okay, so I guess the question I have is so the SBA is the organization that is forgiving some of the loans.
Correct.
So how does that affect the banks, Kevin, and how does it affect the Federal Reserve Bank? If they are forgiving loans, could you explain that, please?
Yeah, so the Bank of Bartlett would work with the small business owner to obtain the funds from SBA.
Okay.
And go through the forgiveness process. In the event that the bank needed additional funding sources to make sure we had cash to lend out while we're waiting on SBA, then we would go to the Federal Reserve to some of their programs, either as a bank or on our borrower's behalf.
Okay. So Rory, do you want to start your presentation? I know you have one.
Sure. And Erin can share a screen, and she'll kind of go over mainly the key takeaways for PPP. And I think, as Kevin was mentioning and others, just the beauty of the PPP is, it's a forgivable loan. So as long as you use the funds the way that you're supposed to use the funds to be forgiven. So with that, hand it over to Erin.
Hello, everyone. So just some key takeaways that were released by the SBA for the Paycheck Protection Program. Basically, you just want to make sure, as Rory said, that you use the funds appropriately, and you should be fine. Now, in the first wave, you can only choose between 8 and 20 or 24 weeks. But with the new draw that started at the end of December, now you can choose between 8 and 24 weeks. So it can be 8, 10, 12, 16, 18, 20, all the way up to 24 weeks for your cover period. And for those of people that aren't familiar with the term cover period, that starts the day that you receive your disbursement of funds from whatever lender or bank that you use to get your PPP. And then that's how you would calculate how you use the funds, keeping track of your expenses, and making sure that you have the right documentation for forgiveness. Obviously, for the second draw PPP loan, the second draw is considered for people that had received the PPP loan earlier in 2020. So of course, as we already mentioned, you have to experience a 25% reduction in gross receipts as compared to any quarter in 2019. So obviously you would compare Q3 2020 to Q3 2019, and so on and so forth. There have been additional deductions and expenses that can be used in order to apply for forgiveness for the PPP loan. Initially, it was mortgage interest or business rent, utilities, different things like that. But now you're looking at supplier cost, operating costs. They even had like some casualty damage that was not covered by insurance that was incurred in 2020. So now there is a broader list of different items that can be used to apply for forgiveness. So it's still a 60-40. So you still have to have your 60% payroll and 40% other costs, but now you can spread that 40% among other categories. great news for those people that received $150,000 in loan amount or less. There is a simplified form. It's called, it's just the 3058S. Or the 3085S, but it's a smaller form. It's about 1 to 2 pages, and you just go in and you attest to using the funds appropriately and making sure that all of your ducks are in the row and all your documentation is ready. And you would send that into your lender, as opposed to the original forms that are a lot longer and more complex to complete. Also, for those of you who received the EIDL advance, you no longer have to subtract the EIDL advance from your PPP loan forgiveness like you did prior to the December 27th legislation. So now, whatever PPP loan amount that you received, you can potentially receive forgiveness for all of that loan amount instead of the PPP loan amount minus the EIDL. So those are the key takeaways for the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as the forgiveness forms that you can now use.
Okay, so Erin, you mentioned a couple of times using the funds appropriately. What exactly is appropriately, and what's not appropriate?
So appropriately, so you have to use the funds. 60% of your funds have to be used for payroll purposes. So that's paying your employees. If you are a self-employed person, obviously you would use the net income on your Schedule C of your 2019 tax return to determine your average monthly payroll, right? And that is how you would determine, that's for the application as well as for the forgiveness amount. So that has to be 60% of your loan. The other 40% can be used again for if you own a building for your business. It can be mortgage interest. If you're renting or leasing a space for your business, it can be rent. It can be utilities, and that includes like MLGW expenses as well as telephone costs. And so those are like the major things that you could use the 40% for. In addition to those, you now have supplier costs. If you have to purchase a lot of PPE for you and your employees, operation costs, paying HR, payroll companies, accountants. So it's now expanded. What I would call inappropriate is using those funds for any personal use. Okay, this is not to, go on a shopping spree. This is not to buy a new car or a new house or any none of that.
None of that.
This is to keep your business up and running and to keep your employees employed. That is the key reason for the Paycheck Protection Program. Hence the name, it's protecting the paychecks of you and your employees. So anything.
And what is the penalty if they do more than what is designed to do?
If you can't substantiate the use of those funds in the categories that I listed, then you will have to pay the money back. It won't be forgiven. Okay, it will be considered a loan, and it will accrue interest that you will need to pay back to your lender. And I wouldn't want to get, any legal trouble. There have been some issues that I've been reading about where people have been fined thousands of dollars and even have been awarded time in prison. So not using these funds appropriately, and if you don't know how to use the funds, seek help, ask questions, go on to sba.gov, talk to an accountant, watch this presentation, to make sure that you're using those funds appropriately.
Okay, so we don't really want anyone to get in any trouble with that. So is there anything else with this presentation, Erin and Rory? Is that, oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just this slide here.
Okay.
Again, just for everyone, that you have to go through a lender. PPP lender for it. So you're not going, directly to SBA. That's really your economic injury disaster loans. I think I saw some of those pop up in the chat, but that's completely separate program. So you need to go to Bank of Bartlett, other banks to apply. And you can go to sba.gov lender match to find those PPP lenders in your area. And of course, as I said, SBA resource partners, which we are, small business development centers. So you can contact us as well for a list of some of the lenders as well. And then, as Aaron mentioned, just so you don't get into those issues as well on your application, can seek help from one of our business counselors, accountants, even the bank as well, to make sure that your information is filled out correctly as well. And as it says here, the date, March 31st, is the deadline for PPP. So
You mean it's the deadline for applying for the PPP?
yes, so another 45 days or so, and it still takes some time as well. So we would say, really, if you're planning to apply, and Kevin can probably speak better, probably at least 10 days or so beforehand, to make sure that everything is approved in time. And again, and it says, of course, unless funds are exhausted, but it doesn't seem like at 115 billion right now, there's still hundreds of billions of dollars left. So it didn't seem like all the funds would be exhausted by the 31st. So,
Kevin, do you want to speak to how soon people need to fill out their applications before the deadline to make sure that everything is, just in case they have to make changes or anything?
Sure. I think 10 days, as Rory mentioned, is probably acceptable. It depends on which bank you're going through. Each bank has different processes and different people that are handling that. For us, typically we can review within a couple of business days and get that back to you. What we found is most of our small business clients need some assistance in completing those forms and understanding those forms, just as the others are referencing. So the quicker, the better. And if you have questions, I know there's lots of questions coming in the chat today that we'll answer. And we're happy to field any of those questions over the next few weeks.
Okay, so while we got you, Kevin, can you give us a description of some of the other loans that the Bank of Bartlett has, other than the PPP loans for businesses, like your business reserve line of credit, your business reserve loan, commercial lines of credit, equipment and vehicle loans, and expansion loans? Could you just give us some information on those loans outside the PPP loans?
Yes, ma'am. I'll go over a little bit, just kind of background of the bank that explains what we do. But we opened business in 1980. We were incorporated by local investors and continue to be locally owned and operated. We have 7 retail locations within Shelby County that offer a number of products and services that you're mentioning. Some of those, that's for both personal and business purposes and needs. It's deposit services, loan services, mortgages. We have a travel division and an insurance division. So a wide array of products and services that we can assist our clients with and people throughout our community. We are one of the top mortgage companies year in and year out for home loan originations and refinances. Right now, with rates being at all-time lows, it's a really great time for business owners and just individuals in general to look and see what their rate is and see if they can refinance to help the cash flow through this pandemic. We do have personal loans, what we call our reserve line, just an unsecured line of credit just in case you need it now or in the future. And then just like the PPP loan, we're participating in the PPP program. We found really quickly that people in this area would benefit from that, and that our community members really needed it. So we shifted quickly and pivoted kind of to go. What we're talking about today is a lot of our staff focused in 2020 on PPP to make sure that our community was able to get access to those funds. But in addition to PPP, we also do other SBA loan programs. So any small business 7A program and some others, we can walk you through that. And we have a large number of advisors in our retail branches and available to walk people through all those different scenarios.
Okay, so we don't have a whole lot of time left, and I'm going to go to some of the questions. Doug, did you want to say anything else before we move to some questions?
Oh, no, we can go ahead and go to the questions.
Okay, so one comment is a 25% reserve reduction requirement applies to the second draw PPP. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, that is correct. So you would have to take, if you're trying to receive funds for the second time, you would have to compare any quarter of 2020 to any corresponding quarter of 2019. And you would have to demonstrate a 25% or more reduction in gross receipts comparatively.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay, so another question that we have is, if you only receive the advance and not the full loan, do you still have to apply for forgiveness?
So the advance is for the idle. The idle advance and the PPP loan are two separate things. The forgiveness is only for the PPP loan. The idle advance is considered a grant, so you do not have to pay that back.
Okay, so another question is, if my business pays PPL as independent contractors, would I be eligible, or do the employees have to be?
I'm not really sure about that question, but for an independent contractor, yes, you can apply for the PPP loan as an independent contractor. Now, if you are an independent contractor and you have employees that are W-2 employees, you
Okay,
can put those on your application. But if you have independent contractors underneath you, they themselves can apply separately as
oh,
independent contractors. Independent contractors are not employees. They're considered self-employed individuals.
okay. So one question, Kevin, is, do you have to have a Bank of Bartlett account to apply?
No, you do not have to have a Bank of Bartlett account to apply. Anyone can apply through the Bank of Bartlett, and you can apply using different banks for the first draw and the second draw. You have to go through forgiveness with the same bank that gave the origination. But if you weren't satisfied with service, or you have another relationship, you can go through any banking institution. And I know they mentioned that SBA has on their website those that are participating that can help them figure out a bank that's best for them.
Okay. Okay, this question is, if you only receive the advance and not the full loan, do you still have to apply for forgiveness? Did we answer that? We did, okay. So, okay, let me see if we have another question. Erica, do we have any more questions? One new message, okay, let me see. No, we don't have any more questions. Well, she's texting me. Let me see what she's saying. Okay, no, we don't. So we're about to close. So if each of you all could give us, some last words or advice for small businesses, would you please do that? Kevin, we'll start with you since you're at the left of me at the top.
Okay. I think with what MLGW Power Pivot's talking about is there's lots of different options for people to get assistance. And we know lots of businesses and individuals need that right now. So if the Bank of Bartlett could be assistance to you, we recommend that you go to our website, which is www.bankofbartlett.com, or give us a call at 901-382-6600. And we have friendly advisors that'd be able to help you walk through if it's something that we can help, like PPP, or if it's just getting you in touch with somebody else in the community that could assist you.
Thank you so much for that information. So now we will go to you, Rory.
Sure, I would say, well, thanks again for having us and sharing this information to everyone in the community as well. I would just say a quote that I shared before, entrepreneurship is a team sport. You can't go at it alone. So you learn about a lot of resources today, and there's a lot of resources throughout the community, and just seek that assistance. And we're glad to assist at the Tennessee Small Business Development Center. So you can go to tsbdc.org and request free advising or see upcoming training that we have available, or you can give us a call at 901-333-5085. Thanks.
Okay, so Doug, before we go to you, I have one more question. Can a 501c apply?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So yeah, there's definitely been a lot of churches and child care centers and so forth who've received PPP. And even this second round of PPP, even your 501c6 organization, such as like a Chamber of Commerce, they could apply this second round for PPP.
Oh, okay. That's a good piece of information. All right, Doug.
So my word of advice, one of the things I heard when I first got to the Fed, maybe it's about 6 years ago, was the quote, "May we live in interesting times." And it's been definitely interesting times the whole time I've been here. The pandemic obviously led to a tremendous loss in society, both loss of public life, but then also the loss of economic. And when you look at that, one of the things I've been very fortunate to be able to work on and also see is the work of the Federal Reserve, and not only from standing up facilities to be able to help people with getting businesses back online, keeping business online, and keeping people employed, keeping banks and keeping those credit markets flowing, but then also a number of other entities that we have within the Federal Reserve, from processing payments for some of the economic credit loans to even keeping cash flow in the area. We have about 85 to 90 employees that work at the Memphis branch of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, and a number of them have been hard at work, our cash and our law enforcement employees, making sure that during the pandemic, when earlier there was a coin shortage and people were looking for physical cash, they're making sure that cash is still flowing through the Memphis market. So I'm always proud to be central to one of our statements, central to America's economy.
Thank you so much for that, Doug. We greatly appreciate your information. We do greatly appreciate you, all of you, taking time to come on. So, not to offend anybody, but we say the best for the movie star. Come on, Aaron, bring it.
I would like to say that the pandemic, unfortunately, has shined some light on small businesses and making sure that you have your foundation in place, right? For a small business, in order to get the PPP loan, a lot of people before the pandemic, they didn't have that accounting background or that foundation in place, that financial foundation in place. And it has been very important to have that done when applying for the PPP loan application and forgiveness, to have those records. So if nothing has shown small businesses, now is the time to get that in place. Now is the time to have those financial statements, get those bank accounts separated from personal funding. So just making sure that you're organized as a business to continue to help your business grow and thrive and survive these interesting times.
Okay, so thank you. And I do want to thank each of you all for your time today. And I want to thank our viewing audience for sharing with us, coming in and watching us today and listening to this great information. Our next Power Pivot will be on March 18th at 4 p.m. And we will be celebrating Women's Month, and we will have some women-owned businesses next month to bring in Women's Month. Again, I want to thank each of you for your time and for sharing such valuable information for our small businesses. Thank you, and have a great weekend. Even though it's Thursday, be safe, mask up, social distance, stay warm too. Okay, we're out.